Hello, legends. Today we are in for a fascinating conversation as I catch up with Leanne Elich. She's a Cub member. She's a doctor. She's a psychologist. She's worked in radiology for treating cancer. And now her business is all about neuroplasticity. She is a neuroscientist who helps businesses basically understand how the brain works and provides tactics to help you ethically influence the behaviors of your customers. She gave me so many tips and tricks on how to do that, and she's just a fascinating person with so much life experience. I thoroughly enjoyed talking to her. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, Dr. Leanne.
Hello, Daniel. How are you?
I'm very good. And excited to chat to you because neuroscience is actually one of my favorite topics. And I guess you are an expert in the neuroscience of almost persuasion and helping businesses ethically influence the behaviors of, I guess, people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And ethically is a really important word, and I talk about that a lot because there is this stigma between manipulation and persuasion. And manipulation has, negative connotations, and that's not fun. We don't want to even dive into that world whatsoever. But persuading people, it's something that is good for both the business person and also the consumer and anyone that you're in contact with. So even though it's subconscious and people don't realise what is actually happening, the outcome is a gorgeous outcome. So it's a perfect outcome for a business, perfect outcome for the person, and a great outcome for the consumer and the person involved.
And so what are you a doctor of?
I am a radiation oncologist, and I also have a PhD in cognitive neuropsychology in business.
Oh, wow. Wait, so what's the first one?
I'm a radiation oncologist, so that's cancer patients.
Yes.
So looking after both adults and children. So my main focus in the oncology space was pediatrics, so newborns to about 18 years.
Oh my God, is that when newborns have cancer?
Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of them are born with cancer. A lot of children develop cancer as they get older. A lot of it is genetic based. It is sad. It's one of the areas in the journey of my career where people go, it's a really hard thing to do. I loved it. I absolutely loved it because for me, especially with the children, even if you have a 2-year-old, being able to give them another 2 years doesn't sound like much in adult terms, but that's doubling their life. So being able to provide an opportunity for them to live another 2 years, for their family, for their friends, to engage with as much normal sort of lifestyle, even going to school, and just experiencing the things that kids are supposed to experience.
What do they think? What do they think that is the cause of like baby cancer? Or
A lot of it is genetic. A lot of it is genetic. So there are, obviously, as we know, and that the media tells us a lot, and also tells us things that aren't actually correct about environmental issues, characteristics, things that are carcinogens that are around us. But as a child that hasn't actually been exposed to a lot of these, most of the times it is genetic disposition. So there's something down the pedigree of the family that has caused through genes for mutation to occur, and unfortunately they then diagnose.
And so when you got into oncology, did you choose to like specialize in helping children, or is that just a path that you kind of fell into?
It was something I really wanted to concentrate on because I actually don't have children of my own. And that's because of, not by choice, actually, by my own problems and illness, and people have things that we don't talk about them, but they're there, and it's okay for them to be there as long as they're managed. At that time, I didn't really know, but for me, I felt I could make a lot more impact, and the opportunity arose. I worked at Prince of Wales Hospital, and back then, the children's hospital, the main children's hospital, was connected to Prince of Wales. So the opportunity was there to be part of the team. And as soon as I entered, that team and that environment with the kids. I just loved it. Mind you, on the other side of the coin, I also used to treat a lot of maximum security prisoners for Long Bay Jail as well. So
That's
it was
two polar opposites.
Yeah. So it was, treating the absolute innocent and then treating the absolute guilty. And that was an interesting journey as well, but we might leave that for the minute. But the kiddies were just, you just impact their life and their family and their whole ecosystem. And especially kids are so resilient. We can learn a lot as adults from them. They're not afraid of dying either. So I created this wall behind where we used to treat them and near my office. And it was those that we used to call it, taken by the angels, that had passed away. And all the kids wanted to do was to be on that wall, picture on that wall when it was their time. They just don't want to be forgotten. And so they would say to me, Leanne, because obviously as easy as possible, I always used to get them to call me Leanne. When it's my turn, because they were all at Ronald McDonald House together. So they all knew that they were sick. They knew, some of their friends didn't come back. Mm-hmm. And they would say, when it's my time, am I going to go up on that wall? And it's like, absolutely, you'll be there. Everyone will see you. You will be remembered. We will talk about you. And wherever you're going, it's going to be a fantastic place. We will miss you. Everyone will miss you here. But your journey is now beginning somewhere else. And whoever it is and wherever it is very lucky. So we used to create that environment for them, and it was good for the families.
Yeah, wow. It's such a change in perspective. But I imagine that still would have been so hard to do.
Yeah, you're right.
Hearing it, you've seen the benefits of changing that perspective, whereas from someone like myself, just listening to it, it also sounds kind of heartbreaking as you're saying it, because you know what you're really saying. And what did you learn from working with children? What was a lesson that you've taken on in your life that you took from that experience?
That's a really good question, actually, because I believe our journey and how we step through our careers and the people that come in and out of our lives, we need to take the good from that and those experiences. I learnt courage. I learnt resilience. And it also, I believe, was the beginning of my neuroplasticity journey. So I'm also a Master Neuroplastician. So a Master Neuroplastician is someone who is an expert in applied neuroscience, and you need to be accredited by a body, and I'm accredited by an international body, and it's creating and being able to develop neural pathways and broaden thinking for people. But you don't enable yourself. We humans judge. So, and it's natural, and it's a protection mechanism, but with kids, they don't tend to. So it was the gateway for me to think really broadly and to think really divergently. And, if someone looks a little bit funny, well, you know what, might be a reason why. Or someone's cranky or someone's acted, not that this excuses bad behaviour, but maybe they had a bad day. Maybe something happened, there was a terrible incident in their life. Before we judge and come to conclusion, we need to think of those things, and we tend not to. So the part of my work that I do now, even in business, is creating that neuroplasticity. And that was one thing, that broadening that scope of thinking was something I learnt from the kids, because that's what kids do.
And so neuroplasticity is kind of like, this is going to be the worst example ever, but it's like plastic surgery but for the brain, and that you can change the brain without, obviously, I know you're not doing surgery or you're not putting any implants in the brain or anything like that, but I assume it means changing the way the brain's functioning.
That's actually a really good example. It is. Yeah, well done. That's awesome. Yeah, no.
I'm the first person that's ever, intertwined the two of them.
Exactly. No, that's great, Daniel. That's great. It is. It's creating. We say that we open neural pathways. So when we think, we obviously have our neural pathways, and we open them up to engage and communicate and use different sort of language, open to influence, as you started talking about before, and being able to look very broadly. So even though it sounds like plastic surgery for your neural pathways, it's essentially not, but it's being in a space where you're not restricting thought, not restricting action, not restricting emotion. You're actually looking at a broader picture. What happens is I'm very much, everything that I do, even the way I look, people who know me, I'm very unconventional. I don't look like a typical scientist or a typical doctor whatsoever. And I get told that a lot. Like even last week, I met someone for the first time and they actually said to me, Leanne, your hair, your funky hair and your pink top, and I've got pink top on today because it is the 1st of October and it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, which is really important, obviously being in the field of oncology. And I like supporting those initiatives. And someone said to me, you didn't look like that when you were a clinician. And it's like, yeah, this is me. This is what makes me me. Clearly that person was not neuroplastic and he needs to, broaden his opinion. But it's about pushing boundaries. And what happens is we think in silos, and that's how the brain operates. It's easy for us to do that, and we need to do that because there's so much information that we're consuming on a daily basis that we need to see patterns. We need to look at sort of certain buckets and pillars to be able to put information in so we can consume it and understand it. But it's the divergency of that which is where the magic happens. So everybody thinks in sort of linearly, in a straight line. And when you broaden that and you think divergently, so I'm not talking about neurodivergence as a diagnosis or conditions, I'm talking about thinking divergently. The periphery is where the magic happens. And that's for you as a person, and also when a business operates in that sense, that's when great things start happening.
So can you explain that to me though? So you brought up the word judging and it being a defense mechanism. And then you brought it up again regarding your appearance as a doctor and people questioning that, and people needing to organize information in their brain. So by your brain simplifying the world and organizing information, it means you're seeing the world in a certain way, the way your brain's organizing it. So is neuroplasticity, is that changing the way your brain organizes things, or is it potentially making the buckets it puts things in bigger?
Yeah, in a way, and more buckets. So
you can be more understanding, more empathetic. Is it almost like increasing your empathy? So being able to see where someone else is coming from, even though that's not the way you see it.
100%. Empathy and emotion, they're different. So we call them mental heuristics, or cognitive heuristics. So what happens is we have a whole lot of information that we need to consume. We actually make 35,000 decisions a day, and our brain operates at 11 million bits per second. That's the latest studies and clinical publications that have come out have said this year. So this is recent information. I'm constantly researching and also have access to a lot of these things, which is really important to get the right data. I'm a scientist, right? There has to be evidence, but how on earth can someone in their waking, and actually it's not even just waking, subconscious and unconscious state, be able to consume that? So we create shortcuts. But what happens is, say we have a full pool of information, we just pick out the bits that we want that suits us. But unfortunately, the bits that we've missed are really important, and that's where judging comes from. So we're only picking bits of information to really take notice of, but it's the bits that we want, so they're biased.
And so when you say judging is a defense mechanism, why is that?
Because we tend to judge in a way that suits us. So if I'm not feeling, so for instance, and this happens, and there is a gender bias to it. Different genders do actually judge differently, and there is a hormonal sort of relationship with this. But with people, if someone says, "Oh, look at that top," why would she wear that? That's probably because they would never wear it themselves, or they would love to wear it, but it's never, ever going to happen. So we look at someone and go, wow, and I'm just looking at, talking about aesthetics here. I mean, this goes a lot deeper than that. Wow, I'd like to be like that. I'm never going to be. So then we judge and go, well, why would you do that? So it has a negative connotation, and it's actually a negative bias. And so a lot of people, when you hear people talk and they can be quite mean, and I've been the recipient of even in the corporate, I'm ex-corporate in the corporate world, of unbelievable bullying and meanness. And I hate to use that B word, but it is around us. And it's something that we need to be aware of and be able to manage successfully and manage safely. Go on.
So, sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but from what I'm taking from what you're saying is that almost judging is a form of us being able to conform. So like we're almost wanting to conform to a group of people. So if someone's different to that group, we judge them because they're not like us. They're different to us, and therefore they could be dangerous, or they could be, they're just not us.
They don't fit. They don't fit our pattern.
Yeah, so it kind of is that like we're born with this almost tribalism that's like, well, we want people to be like us, and then you see it both ways though, because like, and I think this happens in today's world a lot. Like, yeah, you can be judgy to someone that's different to you, but often what's happening in today's world is the person that's different to you is judgy to you. And then it's like two sides just judgy to each other, and neither of them care that each other are different from the other, and neither of them care that the other person sees it however they see it. They're just judging towards each other, whereas maybe the whole world should be more.
Yeah, but sometimes it's positive. A lot of the time it's negative, and that's when we get ourselves in trouble.
And so what would be a positive judge?
It's just like the example that you said, oh, wow, look at that. That's really good. I wish I could do that. Gosh, I really admire you. I really admire you for being...
So like admiration is a positive judgment.
Yeah, and it's, and this is where envy is very different to jealousy. Envy has that, I really wish I had that or could do that, but that's okay. But jealousy has that negative connotation of, well, look at her hair.
I hate you for that.
Yeah, like Mean Girls and, those kinds of things. But we do it, it is a protection mechanism, and we need to... we need to be a lot more confident, and we're conservative, and that's the thing where there is this preconception. I mean, life is perception. I talk about this all the time in my work and when I teach. Business, yourself, your identity, your corporate identity, your personal identity is perception. How do people see you? And when that person said to me, oh, I bet you didn't look like that when you were a clinician, there's obviously a perception of someone who doesn't have a pixie cut, bleached blonde hair, wearing flamboyant clothes. I love bright colours and pink. That becomes my archetype. Normally I have something in my hair, whether it's pearls or a bow or something. It's become my archetype. It's become my signature, and people love it as much as they hate it. But you've got to be confident enough, and coming back to the question about the children and what I've learned, that courage of being myself, being resilient. And, do I get down? I mean, I'm a really positive person. Do I get down? Absolutely, I'm human. What upsets me the most is I understand why someone's doing it, and I don't know why they would feel like that towards me, because I would never do that to them. But it's human behaviour.
Yeah, I think there needs to be more, like, you're on the money. I agree. Like everything is how it's sold. So like to someone. So everyone has their own perceptions of the world, and everyone's perceptions pretty much have the same purpose, which is how do I kind of survive better? Like that's pretty much where every single person's viewing the world from. Like how am I able to survive or do better by the way I'm viewing the world? And, they'll choose how they view the world based on those, and they can make that perception based on the different newses they watch, or the things they have on social media, or their friendship circles, or the community they're born into. But they're getting fed all this information, and their brains are taking it in and basically saying, well, how am I going to organize this information in a way that I can see is going to be most beneficial to me?
That's right.
Because you can't hate someone for that. They need to live. They need to survive. The world was a hard place to survive for a long time.
It still is for some people.
Yeah, and one could argue it still is in general.
Yeah.
But so everyone's coming from a good place, which is, hey, I just want to be okay, and I just want my family to be okay, and I just want my kids to be okay. And so like you'll have a fight of, it's a fight of the same thing. It's like, and I'm not neither one side nor the other, but let's just say it's on climate change. You've got people fighting for climate change because I want the world to still be here for my children, and I want to, I want to do good for the world. And then you have people on the other side saying, well, no, that's not true. I don't believe it. You're taking the job that I've had to be able to pay for my family, and now that that job's gone, my kid's not going to have that job either. What are they going to do? That's all we know how to do. That's, I don't trust that what you're saying, and it's all a money and political ploy, and you're really just taking our job but they're both fighting for their own
cause.
Their own self, their own survival. And I think when you're able to view humans as perceptions as little survival robots, like really is what we are. We're like little survival robots. Like we're living to try to find the best way to survive for ourselves. And I think often people can, especially these days, survival can also mean being virtuous. So I'll go on social media and look at all the things I am for and against. Look how virtuous I am. So you should like me more. I'm a better person. I'm better for society. So I should be raised up, or the opposite. It depends which group you're marketing to. You know. So but it's all a big. It's because I feel like the world's almost gotten wild. It's all this big survival thing where everyone's just promoting what their values are to be accepted by one group or another group or whatever. And sometimes it's well, the best thing you can do is actually sit down in conversations like this, and just talk about being a person today.
Yep. I some of those comments that you said, Daniel, are fantastic. Yeah, the survival robots, that's great. What happens is we cherry pick information. So that's, again, coming down to the heuristics. We cherry pick the information that we want that gives us validity, gives us, authority and the credentials and aligns with our values and the impact that we want to make. You're right. Generally, people are good. They really want to do the right thing.
I reckon 95% of people. 5% you got psychopaths.
Yeah.
And that's true. That's true. There's no way that's not true.
Yeah.
I reckon 5% would be psychopaths.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Probably not 5%, but they're 1%. Not great. Yeah, I mean, people aren't going around. I mean, there are psychopaths that are going around killing one another, but but you got sociopaths as well, and there's other issues.
Sorry, yes. I don't know.
You put them in the bucket.
Difference between
you put them in the bucket.
All the freaks and the bad people, not freaks, they can be good freaks, but the people who are going to do
the people
wrong.
who want to do harm.
Yeah.
People who want to do harm.
That's it.
Yeah.
There's at least 5% of them, I reckon.
Yeah. So people who want to do harm, regardless of what the situation is, that's right. Most of the time, people want to do the right thing. Unfortunately, the way that they engage or they deliver or present themselves isn't always in the best way. But deep down, we do want to make a change. And you're right, it is about survival. It always has been. Our brain is there for survival. People think our brain is there for us to be smart or for us to work things out. The brain's there to protect us. It's a survival mechanism. It's a survival organ. That's why when things happen in terms of sicknesses and illnesses that happen, and the brain will shut certain parts of the body down to keep the organs alive. And, I can even talk about that. I have, it's quite a serious illness. It's all managed. It's great. Yes, I'm fine. Everybody, thanks for asking. But it's hard. And at one stage, my hair was falling out, and because you don't need your hair. But I need my lungs. I need my liver. My heart needs to keep pumping. So we prioritise our organs, and the body priorities, and the brain is the orchestra. There's a conductor that orchestrates the whole thing, and the brain, almost the maestro really, of how our body operates, but also what you tapped into, language and communication. So I teach something called conversational intelligence. So if we think about emotional intelligence and business intelligence, are quite a number of sort of layers higher, and it talks about understanding neuroscience of conversation. And you're right, sitting down and having a conversation and working things out. And this happens, this will never change. We have a lot of different mediums, electronic mediums, that we must use, but sitting down and having a conversation just like this, where I'm also looking at your verbal cues and listening to your verbal cues and looking at your non-verbal cues and can see how you're acting, and same with me. And, we're reciprocating that. It's a much more comfortable situation. You can't see any of that in a electronic or a digital space. And that's where a lot of things get, misunderstood. So sitting down and having a good conversation, a lot of things can. And when we, cherry pick the information that we want, and it might not be the right stuff, we can actually get an understanding why.
Yeah, because it's almost like when you talk digitally, for example, the person's almost less human because there's not a person there.
Yeah.
It's just like I'm talking to either phone or a computer, or like they're just less human.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're sitting with someone, like I reckon you could get, I'm not 100% confident with this, but let's go with it. I reckon you could get two people from opposing kind of political views sit together with no one around them, like no judgment, or like no one cheering them on for their side or anything like that. Just two people go for go for a coffee with the purpose of actually liking each other. So go to actually just make a new friend. I reckon pretty much 9 times out of 10, those people could disagree with each other, ask genuine questions, not hate each other, find ways that they could help each other. Like you normally have a better, like you pretty much can always find things in common with people. Like we all have families, or we're born, are going to die, have ambitions, have friends, have had things in life that have impacted us and that we can talk about and share about and how they've impacted. Like there's so many things you can talk to people about, regardless of what you believe is the best path forwards for the world. You can still actually be friends as humans, but there's none of that ability for just kind conversation between people. And I just want to tie it into the like neuroplasticity or neuroscience or however you want to say it, but it's almost like if more people were able to be more neuroplasticity, I don't know where I'm going with it.
More neuroplastic.
Like more able to understand that just because the way they see the world is that, it doesn't actually mean that is the way the world is, or that like you have to almost realize that like the beauty of the world is that there's all these different people viewing it all different ways. And what actually gives you more power is understanding all the different options there are, because they're options. And it's kind of like, well, I've always used this for myself. Like I've always felt I was pretty good at it actually, which is like really putting myself in someone, like understanding what someone's saying from their perspective. And then it's almost a power. It's like, oh, I've got a superpower now. I understand the world from the left, from the right, from the up, from the down. I've got this really broad vision of perspective, or humanity's perspective. And then you're able really to better. It's kind of like if you haven't left Australia before, and then you go to New York, and you're like, holy shit, this is a big place. I've never seen this before. But you're actually a stronger human for knowing that New York exists and experiencing New York. It's kind of how
getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, they should view perspectives as countries. Yeah. You travel to a country when you travel to someone else's perspective.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's a journey.
Yeah. You can use that in your
I will. That's all right. I'll just credit you. Yeah, source. Yeah.
Dr. Hakim.
Yeah, exactly. So it is. And it's part of the social norm. What do we think is acceptable? But is it okay to think outside the box? I mean, that's part of I have 2 taglines. One is think outside the box. The other is changing business one brain at a time, because we need to look at different perspectives. Just because someone doesn't agree with you doesn't mean that they're wrong. We're all allowed to have opinions. It's when it gets nasty and when we start throwing it and using it against one another, then, and you're right, sitting in a room with 2, say, competing thoughts or even political...
Yeah, that's the word, competing.
Competing, yeah. If you sit them down and there's no other influences, like everyone going rah, rah, rah in their cheer squad and, the campaign group and managers and all that around, it is more likely to come to a conclusion or to get an outcome.
And if they're curious... because if
curiosity is important.
I think it's the most important thing in the world. It's very business. Like a lot of business people are very curious, because, and it's almost the funnest way to be, because it's kind of like if you said something that I completely disagree with, I'd be really curious as to why you said that. Yeah. Like, why is that what you think? There must be a reason. You're not just saying it, hopefully. I mean, I'm sure that happens a lot these days too, but then they might just say, oh, well, I heard it. So that, but you should be really curious as to why someone's thinking or feeling a certain way. It might be that, well, the group of people that I want to associate with that believe that. It might be that an experience I've had has led me to believe that. It might be that, well, that's what I think is going to be the best for my personal life moving forward. So I hope that's true. But curiosity is the key. And so people live in these, I guess, silos. How are you using, so when it comes to just getting to your business, when it comes to helping ethically influence minds so that businesses can grow and prosper, how are you leveraging these perceptions, these different perceptions? How are you leveraging them to achieve goals, business-orientated goals?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so firstly, it is stepping out of that social norm. And it is looking at other views and being able to teach people what we call nudges, which are cognitive biases. So cognitive bias codex is about 280-something cognitive biases now. And amongst the cognitive biases, we can extract a number of them as the way the brain operates to use them in business. There's probably around 100. I've recently written a glossary for a couple of clients. I think I've got around about 100 of cognitive biases that I've given explanation and definitions for that can be used. But there's around 40 that are really impactful. And it's teaching people what the biases do. And once they understand, they realize, oh, that's what I did here. Oh, that's what I did. Oh, that's what I was going to do. So it's getting them to think beyond, well, if I don't use a certain bias or do use a certain bias, I can change the outcome. But the outcome has to be positive for both parties. And this is where I throw in the word, and I use very seriously the word, ethics and ethically. Because in my experience, and I've worked globally in my space, moving from a clinician into medical business, and have worked around the world. The US in particular is quite cutthroat, and there is a lot of manipulative tactics to get people to do business and to get people to buy, especially in the sales environment. So it's being able to wind that back, get people to understand how the mind works, why things are happening, what the biases are that is being instrumental in this decision, opening up that neural pathway, and then getting them to make a right decision. So it's change of mindset, change of language, change of communication, and quite often changing their business model.
And so when you say there are cognitive biases, you've got 40 that are really impactful. You'll try to teach them to your clients to understand those patterns so that they can utilize those biases to help ethically influence people's behavior. Yeah. What is like a few examples of some of these biases?
Yes.
Perhaps maybe the most powerful ones.
Yeah, look, it depends on the situation, but one that I use, we've all heard of scarcity. To be honest, scarcity is a bias. Actually, scarcity is one of the 7 principles of influence. Dr. Robert Cialdini is a phenomenal book. He won a Nobel Prize with all this work that he did on the power of persuasion, the psychology of influence. And he's created 7 principles. There were 6, and a lot of people do quote 6 principles, but there are actually 7. There was a 7th one called unity that he brought into the mix around COVID time. And one of them is scarcity. So creating that sense of urgency, limited time, limited amount of, products, for a exclusivity, VIP, those kinds of things where engaging people to act now. Problem I have with scarcity is it's now overused. So it's, first of all, it's lost its power. Secondly,
no one believes it anymore.
No one believes it. It's lost its power, it's lost its credibility, and it's actually more manipulative tactic. So the reason I brought it up is because people hear about it and see it a lot. But one cognitive bias called the endowment effect is something that is extremely powerful. So the endowment effect is that we put twice as much emphasis on something that we own or we intend to buy. So if an example, and I teach this because I actually do an online course as well, live in the virtual classroom, and I teach these. And the example I use is there's 2 umbrellas, and I've gone into a shop, and I look at an umbrella and the umbrella is $10. I then pick the umbrella up and I put it into, say, my cart, or online, I'll put it in my online shopping cart. My mindset has changed. I've actively done something to get closer to that particular product. There's a sense of ownership. It's almost mine. It's in my cart. I can see it. It's right there. I'm going to look fabulous when I go out in the rain with this funky umbrella. All of a sudden, that umbrella is now worth $15 to me. And generally what happens? We buy it. So as soon as we get close to something and we have that intent to buy, we actually can encourage people or motivate people to purchase. So within their business, creating a sense of involving people in a decision, creating products that include people's, whether they, beta testing is great, getting them hooked that way, getting them involved, putting their names on things. That's another one, cocktail party effect. And getting them engaged in a way that they don't want to let go.
Yeah, involvement's, I think, a huge one these days, because like influencers, like these people follow them, they're involved in their life. These influencers are posting things like, if they released a new, my wife started buying, I wish I knew this brand, what it was called, because even I'm drinking it now, but it's for pregnant people. It's an influencer released like a hydration drink.
Okay.
Designed for women that are pregnant to just have vitamins and things like that in it. But this particular influencer will like post about the process or ask her followers like, what flavors did you like? Did you like this? Or like basically she's probably got all these mostly women involved in the business, involved in her journey. And so they feel more attached to.
Yeah.
So I feel like involvement is saying influencers do a lot. But regarding the involvement, is that like feeling of having something? Does it work because people are more human beings, and correct me if I'm wrong, but human beings are more fearful of losing something they have rather than gain something.
So that's called loss aversion. So loss aversion bias, it's very good. Loss aversion bias, really, really interesting. Used a lot in pricing. So in the work of pricing psychology that I do, we often use loss aversion. We put twice as much emphasis on losing something than gaining something. So for instance, there was a study where it was with Target actually in the US. They offered customers when they went to the checkout with their basket of goodies, would you like $5 off? Or would you like a $5 voucher? Soon as the option was there, everyone went, I want $5 off, because that power of having something or potentially losing it or not using that voucher, we're gaining the voucher, who cares? It doesn't matter. The impact isn't as much. So loss aversion is another one that's very powerful. Going back to with influencers also comes back to Cialdini's work on his 7 principles, and one of them being authority. So what happens with influencers is they create a sense of knowing all. They are someone that we follow, we look up to, we idolize, they become mentors. I know social media influencers similarly operate in the same way. Obviously the algorithm picks it up and that's why we see it over and over again, but the algorithm is using the authority and the sense of influence to engage us with this particular person. But we see them as a source of credibility and authority. So if it was some random person that was just, advertising this vitamin drink, your wife would go, oh, okay, that's interesting. But obviously has engaged using the endowment effect with this influencer. She's now become a sense of authority for your wife, and she's gone, actually, this seems reasonable. This seems like something I would like to try. And there's lots of people that are following and doing the same thing, so it can't be harmful for me, so I'm going to jump on too.
This is probably why all these influencers are making so much money.
Yeah.
They've got involvement.
Yep.
They've got authority.
They're using cognitive biases.
Geniuses.
Yeah. That's right.
And you know what else you made me think of? When like the fear of loss. You know when you go shopping, like to a clothes store, I haven't been to a clothes store in a while, but when you do go and like you see a jacket and you're like, oh, that's really nice. And like, here, put it on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the second you put it on, you see yourself in it. You're like, oh.
Yep.
I
Ownership.
Yeah. And then you're much more likely to buy it than like than if you never put it on. You know what I mean?
If I go into a shoe store, I'm gone. I love shoes. I've got, pink shoes on today. I love shoes. Do I need another pair? Absolutely not. I've got about 150 pairs of shoes. I can't even fit them in the wardrobe, but I love shoes. There's an emotional connection with shoes. They also make me feel good. But as soon as I put them on, the endowment effect, I see them on me. Then I start thinking, oh, they'll go with this outfit. I've got a matching handbag. It'll be good for this event. I'm hosting something next week that's going to be fabulous. And all of a sudden the shoes, I've taken them home. I've bought them and I've taken them home. And do I regret it? Absolutely not, because they were mine the minute I slipped my foot into it. It's like the Cinderella's glass slipper, right? The minute you put that jacket on or put your foot in that shoe, it's all, unless it doesn't fit or something happens, then okay, you're going to decide not to. But if all the boxes are ticked, you are walking out with that pair of shoes.
So I guess the question as a business is, how can you let your customer try your product, or how can you let your customer feel like they already have your product?
Yeah. So
before they've paid.
Yeah. So involving them in the process. So getting them. So some of the things that I do is. And people think I'm crazy, but I often will, because most of my business is obviously referral, and I do a lot of keynote speaking as well. So I'm around, so people see me, and I talk about this passionately because this is the way we should be doing business. It's beautiful, it's fun, it's not salesy, it's fantastic, and we've all got products and services and genius and talents that we need to get out to the world. And if I can provide a pathway for that, it's really important. So the one thing that I do is I'll engage them and say, come with me and we'll sit down and we'll talk about your business. What I do is they'll talk about it and where their struggles are, and then I'll create what we call a choice architecture environment. So choice architecture is where we look at how people come into your world as a business, so how you get customers and clients, and if they leave and why they leave. And we put nudges in place to discourage people from leaving your world of business. So I'll get them to join me on the journey, and we'll look at a small portion of their business, and we'll create a little choice architecture framework. They're involved. They can see that it's working. It was part of, their expertise that was encouraged me and motivated me to get this choice architecture network working for them. They're
Why
invested.
do you call it a choice architecture?
That's the term. In behavioural science and behavioural economics, it's called choice architecture. So what it is you're creating, like an architect would design something, you're designing something that affects choice.
Because the way you're describing it to me, it kind of sounds like you're creating like a business ecosystem. Like almost like, the top of your ecosystem might be like subscribing for free, and then further down, there'd be like a cheaper product or the ability to, attend an event without paying because you're part of this. And then, you go further and further down.
No, it's not hierarchy of products. So it's not hierarchy of products and services. No, it's actually within each product and service, you would have a framework. So we look at what brings people into your world, why they leave. Why are they buying? Why aren't they? How can we get them engaged? What is it that your product does? What does it solve? And who do you need to then target to be able to help them solve that problem? But without knowing the motivation behind customers, we don't know how they're going to make a choice. So that's when we bring in what we call behavioural economics. So behavioural economics is the study of the decisions to purchase. So that's a whole nother step. So we work out, okay, the client is leaving because of this. Okay, so we need to put a nudge in there. The client is leaving because of this language, because of this particular product, because of the pricing, because of the way that you are delivering your product. Okay, so we need to put some nudges in there. But again, ethically, it needs to be right for the business owner, and the business, and it needs to be right for the consumer.
How did you go from working with cancer patients to this type of field? I never asked you. What was the jump?
There was a catalyst. So having worked at Prince of Wales Hospital, Eastern Suburbs, where we had a lot of funding to do a lot of phenomenal things. And I was involved in the team that was called, we were the first, we actually pioneered this sort of system called stereotactic radiosurgery, where we delivered large doses of radiation in a single treatment to the brain. And we worked, it was a game changer for both children and adults.
Because you were a specialist in radiotherapy,
yeah,
weren't you?
that's right.
So you didn't do chemo, you did the radiation.
No, that's right, all radiation. And I then moved into and got offered a position at Liverpool Cancer Centre out west. Well, for me, as a clinician, there's a pledge of doing the best work that you possibly can. And it's my duty, and even now with my business, it is my duty to do the best that I possibly can, for whether it's patients, whether it's clients, whether it's businesses, organisations, teams, individuals. That's just how it is. Unfortunately, going to the western suburbs, where money is not available, and we lobbied to the government to get more funding to try and sort of step up some of the quality of care. I didn't feel that I could do my best work because you're only as good as your tools. And unfortunately, out at Liverpool, and Liverpool's a great place, and I still have colleagues that work there now, it just, the transition from expertise to not being able to provide the standard of care that I did before, it just killed me. It just ate me inside out. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do my job properly. Or
as good as you were doing it at a different hospital.
That's exactly right. And again, that pledge of doing the best that I possibly can, and I wasn't. And a lot of people would just say, okay, well, you're just doing your best. But doing my best, that's not good enough. So when there's other options. So I got headhunted by a medical device company who wanted a clinician to step into their world to train and implement new technologies for radiotherapy. So instead of seeing, and treating 200 patients a year, I could impact about 500,000 patients a year because I was looking after Asia Pacific. And so to everyone's absolute, everyone thought I was crazy. Everyone tried to discourage me, my friends, my family. Why would you leave a fantastic job like that? Security, obviously, from a financial perspective as well, to join such a volatile environment of, a private enterprise and a company that's in medical devices. And I'm like, yeah, but look at all the people that I'm going to impact. It's not just about stability. It's not, again, pushing, becoming neuroplastic. It's not just about staying within the sphere. It's about pushing. It's like I'm in this balloon, and as I'm pressing out, when balloons get really thin as you're pressing out, and I wanted to, burst that and move into something a lot more exciting and make a lot more impact. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this. And I did. And it was one of the best things I did, because not only for me, with my expertise, could I go a lot further and take treatment and the standards of treatment and elevate those to a whole nother level, because I got involved in robotics as well, but I was impacting so many more people. And my world just exploded because I then went global and I worked around the world. So I was able to impact people everywhere. And from there, I then went on and did further study, studied neuroscience, studied genetics at Harvard. I actually did corporate finance at Harvard Business School as well, because I knew that was something that I'd rather stick pins in my eyes than with finance is not my gig, right? But I knew that if I was going to start my own business, I needed to, not accounting obviously, because finance is different, but I needed to understand, the foundations of numbers and running a business. So what the hell? I took myself off to Harvard, and because that's what you do, and I did it there, and it was fantastic. And from there, so all those skills I got in corporate, I now use in my business.
What you're describing though is really interesting. It's actually a change in perception, because business gets a bad rap from people who don't own businesses. It's always like, and even just business people, like when you look in the media, they're always saying businesses are doing the wrong thing and businesses are taking all the money and businesses are doing all this. But actually, business is just any one job that someone else has figured out how to make a bigger impact on more people's lives doing that same job. So for example, if I'm a plumber and I'm helping, me personally, I can go just do maybe 5 different plumbing jobs a day. Hey, it sounds like a small job, but trust me, if your water's not working in your house, it's a big fucking deal. So yeah, if I'm a plumber and then I realize I learn or I enter the journey of creating a plumbing business, all of a sudden my efforts are not just doing 5 people's houses a day, I could be doing 50.
100%.
And of course, yes, do you make more money of that? Of course you do, because you're having a greater impact on society, the community, and the world. But business is a vehicle that enables you to take any one needed service or product and amplify its value to the point where you have limitless numbers of people, 7 billion people, that you could potentially impact their lives on in whatever you want to do. So, and that's kind of what you were doing.
Capitalising
on
your
job
skill.
to business person.
Yeah, so capitalise on the skill. I had a certain skill, and same with the plumber. The plumber has a certain skill. The plumber can't start a plumbing business, really. I mean, they could, but essentially it wouldn't be as effective without having the skill and the trade. Because you've got to sort of know the ins and outs. Now, could you? Yes, you could, and employ plumbers, but you would operate the business very differently. So it's capitalising on that skill and on your trade. So what can you, and how do we enhance that? We don't want to become stagnant. We want to actually grow. So what is it that I need? For me, it was taking the pins out of my eyes and learning corporate finance. But what is it that we need to do to be able to start a business? It takes a lot of courage and guts to start a business. It's much easier to be an employee.
Oh, what? Way easier.
Yeah.
I was talking to my leadership team the other day, and we're talking about, is a staff member stressed or whatever? And I know people have, again, actually, this is wrong because what I'm about to say is not being neuroplastic. But I was like, how can that person possibly be stressed? They're not working that hard. They're not working big hours. They don't have to worry about anything. They, everyone has their family things, but so do the business people. Plus, on top of that, they have everyone else's problems, and then they have all the financial problems, and then they've got all the problems that pop up in a business every day. And if everyone leaves, it all lands on you. So it's kind of like hard to relate. How can that person possibly be stressed? I'm not stressed. But that's not being neuroplastic.
That's right. So you've got to remember the impact of that stress on that person is very different to that stress on you. For you, you might go, that's just something I can deal with very quickly and move on to the next thing. But that doesn't take away the severity of the stress and the impact for that person. And becoming neuroplastic helps understand. Now, is it frustrating? Not saying that it's not frustrating. Absolutely, it's frustrating. And you do have those people that just are lazy and take advantage of things. Yep, I understand that. But look at the perception first. We need to ask more questions. You brought up curiosity before. You said every single business person and people in general need to be more curious, and it is actually a superpower. We need to ask more questions. So that person may have had, a death in the family and just get to a point where they're so cognitively loaded that one more thing, no matter how big or how small it is going to tip them over the edge. And quite often, it's the tiny, tiny thing that actually tips them over because they are at the brim. And that's when people go, how on earth could that have caused so much kerfuffle? Well, it's because it actually wasn't the real reason that the person got to this state.
And with the frame mind of being curious, like if one of your team members is saying that they're stressed or they're telling their boss that they're stressed and you're thinking, well, why is this person stressed? Maybe you just ask them, what's stressing you out? It could be the way that...
Can I help?
Yeah.
Is the first thing I ask.
It could also be the way that the company's communicating or what the company's celebrating. Or it could be making them feel like they're not doing a good job and so they're stressed that they're not going to have one. Or really be curious.
Be curious.
And just to almost wrap up, how can someone be more neuroplastic? So how do you describe neuroplasticity?
So to become neuroplastic, you need to learn it. So there needs to be experiences and there needs to be opportunity for you to be able to grow and learn. So some takeaways is just for anyone is just look at the world differently. Look at, there could be reasons why. So rather than saying, jumping to conclusions, and I know it's easy to do that because of heuristics and we're all, 35,000 decisions a day. So we've got to make some pretty bold decisions. But rather than just jumping to that conclusion really quickly, just think, hang on, is there something else going on? But to become really neuroplastic, it is a skill that is taught. and you need to learn that. It isn't something that comes naturally.
But what is being neuroplastic?
And being neuroplastic is having that broad opinion and judgment and opening up those neural pathways to learn more and look at broader perspectives, and also broaden your skill, broaden your thought, being able to manage data in the brain a lot better, being able to put information in more reasonable buckets, teaches you how to look for patterns in behaviours and patterns in words and language, so it's easier for you. And so then you've got those skills and that toolkit to be able to, be successful in business. So it's really broad, divergent thinking.
Yeah, and looking at, I really liked what we said when we were send your mind on holiday. In terms, what I mean by that is, I should say different. Your mind should travel to the perspectives of other minds.
Yeah.
It just like learning the world when you travel to other places. Your mind should learn how other minds, where other minds are viewing from. And by having a broader perspective, you're just a more powerful person and better able to navigate the world.
Yeah. So as the example you used before, going to New York, you step into New York, you go, you go walk down to Times Square and go, oh, wow, look at that. And you take it all in. It's the same thing. You go into one of the club lounges, member lounges, and you look at someone that you haven't met before, and rather than casting judgment or a perception, you go, wow, I wonder what they do. They're really interesting. I might just go and ask a question and introduce myself. Be open.
Yeah, I love it. You're amazing. And to our listeners, if you want to get in contact with Leanne, you can go to cub.club/podcast and find information there, including book recommendations, favorite quotes, and greatest lessons. You can also catch up with Cub on social media at Club United Business on Instagram. And if you want to check out our new social media for business owners that provides world-leading networking advisory and community to early-stage businesses, you can go to boa.app is the website, and Boa app on Instagram is also there. Leanne, thank you so much once again.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me on. It's been great to chat with you. Awesome.
It was a topic I love, so I hope everyone else loved it too. I hope you enjoyed the show.